avoiding something and I go play solitaire so I don't have to think? Is that a program?
That's a response.
Okay.
Okay.
Or
The
is it
program I'm
when I
referring
sabotage
to,
myself?
the program I'm referring to is the automatic program in your subconscious mind, the filing system, the NLP part of it, that says, okay, when you see, this is an eyeball, when you see thus and so happen, your brain is going to run an electrical and chemical impulse down to your heart's going to race. Your lungs are going to breathe shallow, your stomach's going to ache, liver, kidneys, gallbladder, small and large intestine are all going to have a chemical electrical cocktail that says, this is real.
That's the program.
Because you saw a bow tie, once you see the bow tie, your heart races, your lungs go shallow, you're ready to run, you're freezing, or you're fighting. So fight, flight, and freeze happens. The tapping interrupts that distress signal. So that's what I mean by program. Have you seen the Coke machines? I've only seen them on video, where you can walk up and you can say, I want a Coca-Cola product. I want it to be cherry, vanilla, diet. And all the little fountains run down and mix it in your cup. And you can take it out and you've got a cup of exactly what you wanted. Cherry, vanilla, diet, Dr. Pepper, or Diet Coke, whatever the program. Okay, it's the same thing here. Anger, for Marcy, what do you feel when you're angry?
My stomach hurts.
Stomach. For me, I get flushed in my face, I turn red, and I'm just ready to punch something. Get that adrenaline that just says, fight. What's it like for you?
I get red in the face, my heart pounds really fast, I feel it in my temples.
Okay, so
And
for all
a lot of times I feel it in my stomach too, it sort of
Okay.
twists in here.
Okay, so all this was described as anger, but it's all different because you have the heart, you have the blood pressure, the pounding temples, you have, this is your recipe for anger. So a program is a recipe for what happens when I see
A trigger.
this trigger, exactly. So that's what I mean by program.
Okay, that's helpful.
Yeah, what you were describing is an outward program of an active, I go from reaction to response, now I'm going to take action. This is my program, this is what I do. And that flower stem with the fight, flight, freeze, when we tap, we overlay peace on top of those responses. Because we break the connection, the signal between the organs that create fight, flight, and freeze and the brain's interpretation of what's going on, especially at the subconscious level.
So if I'm dealing with something like my avoidance deal with...
Oh, you like to avoid, do you?
Well, you know, there's some things that I'm in touch with that I know I'm feeling it. But
Sure.
You know, when I look at that behavior and I go, what is causing this? And I can't get to anything, because that just basically means I'm not
Okay.
going to heal it.
What is causing this is similar to why is this happening?
Okay, that's a big no-no with problem, right?
Why is always the wrong question. What happens when you ask the world why?
It argues.
Why do we have
Factor.
problems? Oh, people love to give you their reasons for why. Why is why a bad question? When you ask the world, why do I have problems? What do you get? You get, oh,
That's the way things are.
it's original sin. Eve ate the apple. So you have problems because of original sin. You have problems because of past lives. Or you have problems because of bad karma. Or you have problems because of family dysfunction and they taught you how. That's closer. But it's still their fault. you know, there are all kinds of reasons. When you ask the world, why do I have problems? They're going to have, your ego gets in the way, and you make choices based on your ego. All kinds of reasons. Sin is the number one in Oklahoma. That darned apple.
This is the result of why, of
This is
asking
the
why.
result of asking the world outside you why. Okay, got that one? Now, what happens when you go inside and ask why? Your brain is an answering machine.
It does the same thing.
It does the same thing. It says, remember this experience? Oh, and don't forget this one. It starts listing all the sins, listing all the events. And you know what they said about you, it must be true. So when you ask why, the brain is an answering machine and it starts giving you all the whys. Now what was a belief? A belief was proof, all the whys, plus emotion. There's two parts to a belief. So if you ask why inside yourself, without talking to your neighbor, your friend, or you know all the people that you hang out with that like to gossip about all the bad stuff that's going on. It's like the guys go play dominoes and talk about their aches and pains. The ladies, you know, do their thing and talk about the guys' aches and pains. But if you have the list and you add emotional impact to it, you form a belief. You have a belief long enough, you form an identity. Once you create an identity, operate with that identity in the world. I don't think I did that one for you guys.
No, that's a new.
Why do you have problems? When did your problems start? How about before you were born? Okay, let me show you why. Before you were born, the stage was set. In other words, there were people here ready to invite you at some level into their world and teach you how to love like they have been loved and like they now know how to love. So if my program is, if you love me, you leave me. If you love me, you yell at me. Then, because that's the two primaries that I got from my family, then I'm waiting for you to come into our world by birth or by choice and teach you how to be like me, because that's my highest form of loving outside of myself, is to teach you how to be like me. Okay? So the stage was set, the people were here. Now, let's talk about the people.
So when
They
my
had
dad
problems.
ceases to affect me with all of his weird stuff, it's because he loves me. And
Absolutely.
he's trying to protect me.
And if you would start talking about all your weird stuff, you'd be just like him. And you would probably drive him crazy. Because those things that really irritate us about someone else are the things that we don't like about ourselves. Unless he loves that part of his identity, and then he'll just love you more because you're just like him. Okay? So, first off, the stage was set. There were other people here. This is before you're born. They had problems. Would you agree? Before you ever arrived, you didn't bring the basket of problems with you. Okay? Well, then you're born. And since they had problems, they had also developed coping skills. So they start creating an environment around you where you start learning naturally the coping skills of your environment. So now you've got these coping skills, but you're just a little kid. And you've learned, if I cry in a certain way, if I cry long enough, then I get picked up, or I get fed, or I get changed. Now, depending on what stage you were born into, if you were the result of a rape, then you were invited differently into the family than if you were the result of high school sweethearts who loved each other through high school and college, got married, bought a house, and are now having a family with an extended family relationship around you. You're treated differently. You're invited differently, right? So your coping skills are going to be different. So whatever coping skills you're exposed to, you then start forming an identity as a child inside that environment based on the coping skills which are tied into your belief system. Your beliefs are being formed, emotion plus experience, even at the infant level, and you're going to get an identity. This is how they treat me, this must be who I am. Therefore, the world at large will treat me the same way, right? If you're told at home that you're a princess and you're so pretty and blah, 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 and you go out in the world and someone tells you that you're ugly, then you don't know what to think of that, because that's not your identity. But if it impacts you enough and has enough emotion with it, then you may take it on as your new identity, okay? So you develop an identity, and with that identity, you start operating in the world, because we end up in the world more than we end up in our home environment. So you take this identity based on your belief system and based on the coping skills you were taught out into the world, and you start trying to interact with all these people who have all these separate experiences. And it's wonderful that most of us have two parents or two adults to begin with, and then we throw teachers in, because then we get all kinds of coping skills from different people, and there's no two blends that are alike. And so we start going out into the world, and what's the first thing we start saying? We're meeting and encountering all these people who don't treat us like we expect to be treated. Why do I have problems? And there the cycle begins. We're back to asking why. We ask why. The world starts telling us. We look inside. We ask why. We start telling us they had problems with, everybody that's in therapy, it's all mom's fault, because they had problems. They coped by yelling and leaving, or they coped by going to bed depressed. Depression is a learned skill. Depression is a way of thinking. And we talked about having the two characters in an event, and that you are both characters once it becomes a memory. So if mom went to bed and was depressed, or went to bed and had migraines, then doesn't it follow suit that when you're of that age or in that situation, you're going to end up going to bed and having migraines, or going to bed and being depressed, because everything else you've been doing as you didn't work, and so you gave up on your coping skills. And it's not a conscious choice. It's not something you're choosing to do to yourself. It's something that happens at the back of your brain, at the subconscious level. And so what do we call that? When someone has depression just like their mother, we call it genetic. When actually it's part of the NLP processing. It's the filing system. The filing system is what creates the chemical responses in the body that produces the chemical cocktail in the brain that says you have depression. And by the way, there is no scientific test to draw blood and say you're depressed, but they still give you a pill for it. Okay.
So then, say some more about why not to ask why.
Okay.
Or what's the right question?
Yeah.
How do you know? So why do we have problems? Is the bad question. The good question is, how do I know I have a problem? The Faster EFT question is, how do you know?
So it's not, oh, my head hurts, why does it hurt? But how do I know?
How do I know I have a headache? Let me say a little bit more.
Okay.
Have you ever had a problem and in hindsight realized it wasn't actually a problem? That you thought in the moment you had a challenge that you probably were going to have to jump over. And in hindsight, after it was over, you went, no, I thought it was a problem, but it was actually an opportunity. It actually came out well. I actually would never have, if there's a rainstorm and the door's locked and you're having to walk around the building, you've got a problem because you're getting drenched without your umbrella. But as you're walking around the building getting drenched without your umbrella, if you run into your soulmate at the front door, was that a problem or was it an opportunity? It's all in perspective, okay? So, you mentioned headache. I have a headache. How do I know I have a problem? Well, my head is pounding. Okay, your head pounding is a physical response, right? So back to the flower. The reaction is I'm getting a migraine or I have a headache. Okay? What were you feeling right before the headache came on? What was the thought processes you were going through, or what event occurred that triggered you to have a headache? Well, Mom had migraines. Now I have migraines every cycle. But 3 days before I have my cycle, I have a headache, just like Mom did, and just like my aunt did. So it's got to be genetic. Or it's a program in your mind that says, at that time, I want Mom's love and comfort. I want the quilt. I want to go to bed. I want to feel nurtured. I want to pull the blanket up over my head and escape the world. And the way Mom did that was to have a migraine or to have a headache. And again, this is not about blame or judgment. This is about how we run our programs. So if your reaction is to have a headache, just like Mom had, then we can go back and clean up the memories of what Mom looked like when she had her headaches. And see Mom smiling and maybe reading a magazine in bed and having tea with you. And you no longer have Mom's program. Or if you're having a headache and it's that kind of headache, it's that throbbing temple headache, it's that tension headache, then that pain, that heaviness, that stress, break it down into the submodalities of what it really is. So, because if you say headache, that can be a number of things. For me, a headache is usually a pain at the base of my brainstem, that hollow there, that's just so tight that I'm starting to get nauseous. Unless it's an allergy headache. And then my eyes are real dark underneath, and I've got this throbbing here. So what kind of headache, what kind of pain? That break it down into the little pieces.
So then how do I know that I have a problem? Is to look at all those actual in the moment pieces.
Absolutely.
How do I know what is happening right now?
Right. And then if you have several of them, put them in a pot in front of you. Okay, that pain, that pressure, that that 30 pounds of pressure on my temples, that bright light I can't take right now. Put them in. Let it go, let it go, let it go, let it go, let it all go. Safe to let it go. Peace. Go back and check it. Okay, now it's at a 7. Okay. Now, if someone is standing there with a ping pong paddle whacking you in the head, and you have a headache, no amount of tapping is going to stop that pain, because it's not an emotional pain. But if there's not a physical reason, and I'm not talking about a symptom like a migraine coming on, I'm talking if there's not an outside the world physical symptom coming on you, then unless you have a brain tumor, which is another physical symptom, then more than likely you can get rid of it with the emotional release, stopping those meridian lines from running your chemical and electrical cocktails to the organs that create stress. Just remember what stress is. Stress is the body's reaction to perception, and all perception is created.